Welcome to Dark Night Tales. Tonight, we uncover a true and chilling story from the year 1893, the mystery of Bella Adams, the brown-eyed girl whose extraordinary nature defied all explanation. This is not a legend, not folklore, but a real case buried in old records and whispered accounts. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're watching from, your country, your city, or even the time of night. And if stories based on true, deeply researched historical data fascinate you, make sure to subscribe. These videos take intense effort, rare sources, and careful fact-finding to bring forgotten truths back into the darkness. And this one will stay with you long after it ends. The year 1893 was a time when the world stood uneasily between old beliefs and emerging science. Electricity was still a wonder, medicine relied more on observation than understanding, and psychology as a field was barely forming. In small towns and rural communities, superstition often carried more weight than education, and anything that could not be easily explained was feared rather than studied. People believed in omens, curses, divine signs, and inherited sins. A child born different was not seen as unique, they were seen as dangerous. Society in 1893 was deeply divided by class, gender, and tradition. Children, especially young girls, were expected to be quiet, obedient, and invisible. There was no protection for those who behaved strangely or thought differently. Schools punished curiosity, doctors labeled what they could not diagnose, and churches filled the gaps science could not. Records were handwritten, easily altered, or quietly erased, making it dangerously easy for extraordinary cases to vanish from history. Medical knowledge was primitive. Mental health was not understood, and unusual abilities or behaviors were often categorized as hysteria, possession, or moral defect. If a child showed signs of heightened awareness, emotional intensity, or inexplicable perception, there were no tools to explain it, only fear. Families were advised to hide such children, isolate them, or surrender them to institutions where problems were locked away from public sight. It was into this fragile and unforgiving world that Bella Adams was born, a time when being extraordinary was not a gift, but a risk. Where a child with unusual eyes, strange silence, or unsettling presence could become the center of rumors within weeks. Understanding this era is crucial, because in 1893, the world was not prepared for someone like Bella, and once fear took hold, there was rarely a path back to safety. The earliest known reference to Bella Adams appears not in a medical journal or church registry, but in a brief, almost dismissive local record from the early 1890s. It was the kind of document meant to note existence, not importance, a census-style entry listing a child's name, age, and residence. Yet even in this dry record, Bella stood out. A margin note, written in a different hand, described her as unusual in manner, a phrase that, in that era, carried a heavy and unsettling meaning. Shortly after, Bella's name surfaced again in a school attendance ledger. Unlike other children, her presence was inconsistent. Days were marked, then abruptly left blank, then resumed without explanation. Teachers added comments beside her name: silent, observant, and most disturbingly, unnerving to other pupils. No academic failures were recorded, no disciplinary actions either. Just an unease that could not be translated into rules or grades. What makes these early mentions chilling is what they do not explain. There is no description of illness, no mention of injury, no record of misbehavior. Instead, the notes hint at something felt rather than seen, a discomfort that adults could not articulate, but felt compelled to document. In a time when paperwork was minimal and ink was precious, such remarks were rarely made without cause. A final, early reference comes from a town meeting log, where Bella's family name is mentioned in connection with a private concern. No details follow. No decisions are recorded. The discussion simply vanishes from the minutes. From that moment on, Bella Adams is no longer recorded as an ordinary child, but as a quiet anomaly, present in ink, yet already slipping into obscurity. These first mentions are important because they prove one thing beyond doubt. Bella Adams was real. She existed within official systems. She was noticed early, and from the very beginning, something about her unsettled the people who were meant to understand her. From the moment Bella Adams was first noticed, it was her brown eyes that drew the most unsettling attention. In an era when people searched faces for signs of moral character or hidden sin, eyes were believed to reveal what words could not. Bella's eyes were described as unusually deep in color, not merely brown, but dark, reflective, and intense, as if they absorbed more than they revealed. Neighbors whispered that when she looked at someone, it felt less like being seen and more like being examined. What disturbed people most was not how her eyes looked, but how they behaved. Bella rarely blinked when spoken to. Children claimed she could hold a stare for an uncomfortably long time, unmoving, expressionless, yet fully alert. Adults said her gaze lingered, even after she turned away, an impossible sensation that left them uneasy without knowing why. In a time when prolonged eye contact was considered improper, especially for a young girl, this alone was enough to mark her as abnormal. Superstition quickly filled the gap left by logic. Brown eyes, particularly ones described as too dark, were sometimes associated with old folklore, omens watchers, or children believed to be born with heightened perception. Some claimed Bella could sense emotions before words were spoken. Others swore she reacted to events moments before they occurred, her eyes narrowing or widening without any visible cause. No one could prove these claims, but fear does not require evidence, only repetition. Religious figures added fuel to the unease. A local sermon reportedly warned of souls who see too much, a statement many took as a veiled reference to Bella. Mothers pulled their children away when she passed. Conversations stopped when she entered a room. Over time, her eyes became a symbol, not of innocence, but of something unknowable. In reality, there was nothing physically wrong with Bella's eyes. No doctor recorded disease or defect. Yet in 1893, perception mattered more than truth, and once fear attached itself to something as visible as a child's gaze, it became impossible to separate the girl from the legend forming around her. Bella Adams was no longer just seen, she was suspected. As Bella Adams grew older, it was no longer just her presence that unsettled people. It was her behavior, subtle yet deeply unsettling in ways doctors of 1893 could not explain. She did not act violently, nor did she behave irrationally. In fact, her movements were calm, deliberate, and controlled. That, perhaps, was what disturbed observers the most. Bella did not display chaos, she displayed order where none was expected. Physicians who were asked to examine her noted her silence. Bella spoke very little, but when she did, her words were precise, emotionally detached, and often delivered without hesitation. She showed no stutter, no confusion, no signs of cognitive delay. Yet she also showed little interest in conversation, play, or social bonding. Doctors attempted to label this as shyness, melancholia, or nervous withdrawal, but none of those diagnoses truly fit. More troubling were Bella's reactions, or lack of them. Loud noises did not startle her. Sudden movements did not provoke fear. Situations that caused distress in other children produced no visible emotional response. At the same time, she appeared acutely aware of her surroundings. Doctors recorded that she noticed details others missed, small changes in a room, unfamiliar sounds at a distance, subtle shifts in people's moods, yet reacted as if she had already anticipated them. Medical examinations revealed nothing physically abnormal. Her heartbeat was steady, her reflexes normal, her senses intact. No fever, no seizures, no trauma. Each visit ended the same way, no conclusion. In an era desperate to categorize and control, Bella resisted classification. She did not match hysteria, did not resemble feeble-mindedness, and showed none of the moral defects doctors commonly assign to unexplainable children. Privately, some physicians admitted discomfort. One is said to have remarked that Bella appeared too composed for her age, a statement that carried no medical meaning but revealed deep unease. Without a label, they could not prescribe treatment. Without treatment, they could not reassure the community. And so, Bella Adams became something far more dangerous than ill. She became undefined. In 1893, when science demanded categories and certainty, a child who could not be classified was not seen as healthy, but as a problem waiting to reveal itself. While doctors struggled to explain Bella Adams, the people who saw her every day, neighbors and teachers, began forming their own conclusions. Their accounts were informal, undocumented, and driven by emotion rather than science, yet they shaped Bella's fate more than any medical opinion. These were the voices that turned uncertainty into fear. Neighbors described Bella as quiet but ever-present. She did not wander or play like other children. Instead, she stood still for long periods, watching the street, the trees, or the sky with focused attention. Some claimed she seemed to know when someone was approaching before they appeared. Others said she turned her head toward voices that were too distant to hear. Whether these claims were exaggerations or misunderstandings, they spread quickly in a community already uncomfortable with difference. Teachers, bound by structure and routine, were equally unsettled. In the classroom, Bella followed instructions perfectly, yet rarely asked questions or sought approval. She completed her work without error, often faster than expected, then sat silently, staring at nothing in particular. When called upon, she answered correctly, but without emotion, as if the outcome never mattered to her. One teacher reportedly wrote that Bella behaved less like a child, more like a witness. The most disturbing accounts involved her interactions with other students. Children said Bella made them uncomfortable without saying a word. Some claimed she could tell when they were lying. Others insisted she knew secrets she was never told. Fear led to avoidance, avoidance turned into isolation, and soon Bella sat alone, not by choice, but by exclusion. No single account proves anything extraordinary, but together they formed a pattern that adults could not ignore. When teachers and neighbors began sharing these stories with one another, they reinforced a shared belief something about Bella Adams was not normal, and whatever it was, it made people uneasy. In the end, it wasn't science or religion that defined Bella, it was testimony. And once a community agrees on a story, truth becomes irrelevant. Bella was no longer judged by who she was, but by how she made others feel, and fear is the most powerful judgment of all. As concern around Bella Adams intensified, formal medical examinations became unavoidable. Local physicians and eventually specialists from nearby towns were asked to evaluate her condition. These examinations were meant to bring clarity, yet each one only deepened the mystery. In every measurable way, Bella appeared physically healthy. Her posture was normal, her motor control precise, her breathing steady. There were no signs of disease, injury, or developmental delay. Doctors tested her senses first. Her hearing was acute, sometimes unnervingly so. She could identify faint sounds that others missed, yet showed no sensitivity or distress. Her eyesight was confirmed as excellent, though several physicians commented, unofficially, on the intensity of her gaze. Reflex tests produced expected responses. Memory assessments revealed something unusual. Bella recalled information after hearing it only once, with no effort or repetition. Still, there was no framework in 1893 to define this as anything other than odd. The greatest challenge came from her emotional responses, or rather, the absence of them. Bella did not display fear, excitement, or nervousness during examinations. She answered questions calmly, without confusion or resistance. When doctors attempted to provoke reactions, sudden noises, unexpected movements, her responses were measured and controlled. This unsettled physicians more than any abnormal result could have. Without physical symptoms, doctors turned to theory. Some suggested nervous conditions. Others hinted at suppressed trauma, though no evidence supported it. A few proposed that Bella's behavior was simply beyond current understanding, an admission that carried professional risk in a time when doctors were expected to have answers. Official reports ended with vague language, no clear diagnosis, condition unclassified, or observation recommended. But observation brought no change. Each examination ended where it began, with uncertainty. And in 1893, uncertainty was dangerous. Without a diagnosis, there could be no treatment. Without treatment, fear was allowed to grow unchecked. Medical science had failed to explain Bella Adams. And when science steps back, society steps forward, often with far harsher judgments. When medicine failed to explain Bella Adams, the community turned to religion, the last authority people trusted when science offered only silence. In 1893, faith was not separate from daily life. It defined morality, identity, and the meaning of the unknown. Anything unexplained was quickly framed as spiritual, and Bella became the center of quiet but persistent religious concern. Clergy never accused her directly, but sermons began to change in tone. Messages warned of children born with knowledge beyond their years, and souls that observe rather than live. These words, though never naming Bella, were unmistakably aimed at her. Congregants connected the message instantly. What doctors could not diagnose, religion could reinterpret. Whispers followed. Some claimed Bella was marked at birth. Others believed her brown eyes were a sign of inherited sin or divine punishment passed through bloodlines. A few even suggested she was a test sent to the faithful, a being meant to reveal who truly believed and who merely pretended. None of these rumors had proof, but proof was never required when fear aligned with belief. More disturbing were the private prayers held for Bella, not for her health, but for protection from her. Families quietly asked priests whether allowing their children near her was dangerous. Parents crossed themselves when Bella passed. She was still physically present, but spiritually isolated. Religious authority gave legitimacy to fear. Once concern was framed as salvation rather than suspicion, it could not be questioned without challenging faith itself. Bella was no longer just unusual, she was interpreted. And interpretation, when guided by fear, can be more powerful than any accusation. In the end, religion did not condemn Bella Adams openly. It did something far worse. It allowed the community to believe that their fear was righteous. As fear, rumor, and misunderstanding grew, Bella Adams did not need to be formally banished. Isolation happened naturally, quietly, and without resistance. By the time she reached late childhood, her presence alone was enough to change the atmosphere of any room. Conversations softened, eyes turned away, and doors that once opened freely began to close. Children were the first to distance themselves. Playmates stopped inviting her outside. Seats around her in school remained empty. Teachers no longer encouraged group activities involving Bella, not out of cruelty, but discomfort. She was easier to manage when alone. Slowly, solitude became routine, and routine became permanent. Adults followed. Neighbors avoided passing by her home. Shopkeepers grew tense when she entered. Even family acquaintances spoke to her parents in lowered voices, suggesting it might be best to keep Bella inside. Protection was the word they used, but protection from what was never clearly said. What made her isolation more unsettling was Bella's reaction to it, or rather, her lack of one. She did not resist exclusion. She did not cry or protest. She adapted. Bella spent long hours alone, observing, listening, waiting. To outsiders, this seemed unnatural. To her, it appeared normal. In 1893, society had no space for children who did not fit emotional expectations. Isolation was seen as a solution, not a cruelty. Bella Adams became a shadow within her own community, known by name, yet rarely seen, remembered more as a feeling of unease than as a person. By the time concern turned into action, Bella was already gone socially, even before she disappeared from records entirely. One of the most unsettling aspects of Bella Adams' story is not what was written about her, but what wasn't. After years of scattered mentions in school logs, medical notes, and town references, official documentation of Bella Adams abruptly ended. There was no formal explanation, no closing entry, no record of relocation, illness, or death. The ink simply stopped. School attendance books list her name consistently for a period of time, then leave her row blank. No remark, no strike-through, no transfer note. Medical records end with recommendations for continued observation, yet no follow-up appears. Even church registries, known for documenting every significant life event, show no confirmation of communion, marriage, or burial. For a time when record-keeping defined existence, this silence is deeply abnormal. Town records are equally troubling. Bella's family name appears in tax and residency documents, but her own name vanishes, as if she no longer belonged to the household. In some copies, later revisions appear to have overwritten earlier entries. Whether this was deliberate or careless cannot be proven, but the result is the same. Bella Adams fades from official memory while still theoretically alive. In 1893, people did not simply disappear without leaving some trace. Even institutionalization, relocation, or death produced paperwork. The absence of documentation suggests intervention, quiet, efficient, and unchallenged. Whatever decision was made about Bella, it was not meant to be discussed. This sudden administrative silence marks the moment Bella Adams crossed from being a documented child into an unsolved historical absence. And once the records stopped, the truth became almost impossible to recover. There is no official record of the exact night when Bella Adams' life shifted irrevocably, yet multiple accounts, passed down in fragments and whispers, point to a single evening when concern turned into action. It was described as quiet, unremarkable on the surface, the kind of night no one would remember, if not for what followed. Neighbors later recalled unusual activity near Bella's home. After dusk, a light remained on far longer than usual. Figures were seen entering and leaving, their identities unclear, but their purpose implied. No raised voices were reported, no signs of struggle. Whatever occurred that night was calm, controlled, and deliberate, which made it far more disturbing. Some claimed a doctor had been summoned. Others insisted a religious authority was present. A few believed town officials were involved. What all versions agree on is this: by morning, Bella Adams was no longer seen. Her window was dark. Her routine was broken, and no explanation was offered. Her family gave no public statement. When questioned, they reportedly avoided direct answers, speaking only of necessary arrangements. In a time when privacy was respected and authority rarely challenged. This was enough to end inquiry. People sensed that asking further questions was unwelcome. That night marks the point where Bella's story stopped being merely strange and became ominous. From then on, there were no sightings, no records, no confirmation of where she had gone or why. Only the certainty that something decisive had happened and that it was meant to remain unspoken. After the night that changed everything, Bella Adams did not simply fade from public view, she'd vanished from history itself. No subsequent documents reference her name. No census update, no medical follow-up, no church entry, and no burial record exists. It is as if every system designed to record human life collectively agreed to forget her. What makes this disappearance so disturbing is how thorough it was. In later copies of town records, earlier marginal notes mentioning Bella no longer appear. School registers from following years list fewer students, yet offer no explanation for the absence. Family documents continue, but Bella is never mentioned again, not even in contexts where omission would make no sense. Silence became permanent. Historians who later attempted to trace her life encountered dead ends at every turn. There are no letters, no photographs, no personal belongings preserved in archives. Even oral histories are fragmented, told cautiously, often ending with the same phrase, "People stopped talking about her." In the late 19th century, disappearance usually left evidence, a grave, an institution, a relocation notice. Bella Adams left none. This suggests not accident, but intention. Whether she was removed, hidden, or reclassified under another name cannot be proven. What is clear is that her erasure was systematic. Once removed from records, Bella ceased to exist in any official sense. And without records, truth becomes vulnerable to myth. Her disappearance transformed her from a child into a mystery, one that history itself seems to have chosen to conceal. With no records, no witnesses willing to speak openly, and no physical evidence, Bella Adams' fate has become a space filled by theories, none confirmed, none entirely dismissible. Each theory reflects the fears, limitations, and beliefs of the era in which she lived and the questions that still haunt it. One theory suggests institutionalization. In the late 1800s, children deemed unmanageable or abnormal were sometimes quietly committed to private facilities under altered names. Records from such institutions were often sealed or destroyed. If Bella was sent away, it may have been done deliberately without documentation, ensuring she would never be traced. Another theory points to religious confinement. Some believe Bella was removed for spiritual correction, hidden within a religious order or isolated under supervision. Given the religious anxiety surrounding her, this theory gained traction among those who believed the community saw her as something to be contained rather than healed. More unsettling interpretations lean toward suppression. Bella may have displayed cognitive or perceptual abilities far beyond what the era could accept. Rather than study her, authorities may have chosen to erase her presence to prevent panic or controversy. In a world unprepared for difference, disappearance was easier than understanding. Finally, there are those who believe Bella simply ceased to exist under her own name, renamed, relocated, absorbed into anonymity. If true, the disappearance was not of a person, but of an identity. None of these theories can be proven, and that is what makes them endure. Bella Adams remains unanswered not because the truth is unknowable, but because whatever happened was never meant to be known. With Bella Adams erased from records and memory, all that remains are theories, each shaped by fear, belief, and the limits of 19th century understanding. None have ever been confirmed, yet none can be dismissed entirely. They exist in the silence left behind. One theory suggests institutional confinement. During the late 1800s, children who could not be explained or controlled were sometimes sent to private asylums under different names. These institutions often kept minimal or sealed records. If Bella was committed this way, her identity may have been deliberately altered, ensuring she would never be traced again. Another theory points to religious intervention. Given the sermons, whispered prayers, and spiritual fear surrounding her, some believe Bella was removed for what was seen as moral or spiritual correction. In such cases, isolation was justified as protection of the community, not punishment of the child. A darker theory suggests deliberate suppression. Bella may have possessed an awareness or ability that unsettled authorities. Rather than provoke panic or challenge existing beliefs, the safest solution may have been to erase her existence quietly. No records, no discussion, no questions. There is also the possibility of complete identity loss. Bella may have lived on, renamed, relocated, absorbed into anonymity. If so, the mystery is not her death, but her disappearance as a person known to history. These theories remain unanswered because the truth was never recorded or was intentionally removed. And as long as the silence remains, Bella Adams will exist only as a question history refuses to answer. Bella Adams' story was not forgotten by accident. It was allowed to disappear because remembering it would have raised questions no one in 1893 was prepared to answer. Her existence challenged the limits of science, religion, and social order at the same time. And when a single life threatens multiple systems of belief, the safest solution is silence. Bella did not fit the definitions of illness, sin, or normality. She exposed how fragile those definitions were. Doctors could not diagnose her, clergy could not clearly condemn or save her, and society could not decide whether to protect or fear her. Remembering Bella would have meant admitting that authority had failed, and authority rarely records its own uncertainty. Erasing her story also protected the community. If Bella's fate were known, it might have revealed uncomfortable truths about how different children were treated, hidden, or removed. Forgetting her preserved the image of order, morality, and control. Silence became a form of self-defense. History often remembers heroes and villains, not contradictions. Bella Adams was neither. She was a question with no answer, and unanswered questions are dangerous. So her name was left out of books, her story reduced to whispers, her existence dissolved into uncertainty. Yet the very fact that fragments remain means the erasure was incomplete. Bella Adams still lingers at the edge of history, a reminder that some truths are not lost, they are buried. And what is buried is often the most unsettling of all.